Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope you're having a fabulous morning already, whether you're just getting started or if you've been up for a while. I have been up for a while. But in any case, whatever it is, I hope it's a fabulous day already and just continues to get better. Wellness Wednesday is my favorite for a number of reasons, but if you're just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I'm a mom, a nana, a girlfriend, a student, grad school student studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, jazzerciser, line dancer, runner. I love to learn things. I love spending time with my family, and anything that has to do with activity, outdoors, etc. Although sadly enough, I don't get, because of grad school, I don't get as much time out in the wild as I would like. In any case, if you have followed me for a while, then you probably saw last week's video, which kind of ended up being part 2 in a 2-part series that was originally not intended, but it just seemed to work out well. So last week was an overview of grief and the different types of grief that we can experience. And then the week prior to that was the long goodbye, which was about letting go of things that are no longer for us. It wasn't just about losing a loved one. So grief and letting go kind of went well together. If you didn't see that, I will be dropping a link to the grief episode in the comments when I'm done. If you need to know more or have trouble finding, they're all on my page, but Facebook does delete videos, live videos after 30 days now. And I am working on getting all of my Wellness Wednesday videos uploaded to YouTube so that I can start dropping you the YouTube channel link, to help you find previous episodes. So in the meantime, I appreciate you being here, whether you're new or not. And I started, well, if you are new or if you need a reminder, I started Wellness Wednesday because I have been in a lifelong battle with depression and anxiety. And I consider myself to be in recovery, but one of the things I've learned over time is that sharing information, sharing tips, sharing experiences helps. That's why Pure Wisdom works in so many settings for support groups. So I encourage you to ask questions, make comments, give your own tips, whatever you think might work, but let's keep it positive, and let's keep it politics free. I'm just so glad you're here. So today we're going to take it on the lighter side because we did spend the last 2 weeks talking about letting go and talking about grief. We're going to take it to the lighter side today because y'all, summer break for some of us is getting ready to end fast and hard. The new school year is right around the corner. It may be, some of you may even be prepping for it already. I'm not sure where you are, but I am in Florida and school will start the first or second week of August, usually the first week of August, I think, whereas some of the northern schools don't start till after Labor Day, but it is coming, but there is still time to check out some great family movies for when you do decide to impart screen time on your youngsters. Okay, so before I get started, these are going to be some great family films with some great messages. But before I get started, let me talk about Common Sense Media. Common Sense Media offers some general ratings, and it basically it's a great resource for parents. You do have to pay for a membership, or you can only see so many things before it starts kind of blocking stuff. I've not paid for a membership yet. Anytime I've done movie reviews, I've managed to get through 4 or 5 movie recommendations before it kind of starts shortening stuff up and is like, hey, you need to join. But they provide ratings and reviews for various media, including movies, TV shows, books, apps, and games, to help families make informed decisions about what their children consume. So before you impart the screen time, in whatever limits that looks like, with your kids, this is a great resource for checking out what the ratings are. And what they do is they give a Common Sense Media rating, but then they also give parents ratings and kids ratings, which are kind of interesting sometimes to compare. Keep in mind, it's all subjective. But their rating system is broken down by age recommendations, star ratings, which indicates the overall quality of the media, ranging from 1 star, which is don't bother, to 5 stars, which is truly outstanding. And again, age recommendation, and which reflects the title's entertainment value, educational value, and other factors. It'll also let you know if there's violence, if there's sexual content, language content, possessive or positive messages, role models, consumerism, and educational value. So it's just another helpful resource. Of course, the best resource is you. Sometimes it's a good idea, depending on the movie, to sit down and watch it before you let your child watch it, or at least watch some good clips of it to kind of get an idea what it's all about. But the best way is always to sit down and watch it with your child after checking out the reviews, maybe watching the trailer, and determining what you're comfortable with. And that way you're there to explain things if questions come up. Now, during the summer, I have the privilege of taking my grandkids an extra day during the week, which means I get some time with them. And one of the things that we always do is we watch a movie. And that is the limit of their screen time generally when they're with me, is that they get to watch a movie. And so a lot of times I get introduced to new movies in the summer while they get introduced to old movies that are some of my faves. So let's get started. I have 4 that to me are some of the top ones for this year that are definitely family friendly. And one I'll put a disclaimer on, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So here we go. The first one, and actually the first 2. So the first one is Inside Out. Now this movie was released in 2015. I had heard of it. I had filed it somewhere in the back of my head, didn't know much about it. And then in talking with a youth counselor, I found that youth counselor was using Inside Out characters to refer to feelings. So I became curious. I started asking questions, and my grandson was like, "You've never seen Inside Out? I can't believe it. We need to watch it." So we did. And it is absolutely fabulous. I absolutely love the movie. It is rated PG. That's the official rating, which means parental guidance suggested. Of course, before I sit down and watch movies, I typically ask my daughter. I like to make sure that I'm on the same page with her. I'm not that grandmother that undermines the parents. As much as it might be tempting to be like, no, you're going to do what you want at grandma's house and then I'm going to send you home. I tend to be more of an extension of the parental arm, which I think is what's best for the kids, especially since the kids, they thrive on structure. Structure is a good thing. And what we don't want to teach them is that there's anything wrong with what their parents are doing. At least that's my position as a grandparent. So I always check with mom to make sure it's okay if there's something new, especially if it's something they haven't seen. But I also sometimes verify with mom to make sure they've actually seen the movie. So the first pick for this year is Inside Out. It came out in 2015. It's rated PG. Common Sense Media gives it ages 6+. My grandchildren are 8 and 9, and a 5 out of 5 stars. Now, with that said, there are some components that might be considered too scary. There are some concepts, and some mature things. Like, for example, the main character, Riley, has an imaginary boyfriend who's kind of on a repeat loop that says, "I would die for Riley." Obviously, again, imaginary boyfriend, kind of a fantasy thing. But as a parent, it may depend on whether or not you want to even address that. There are some insult words like shut up and moron and idiot, etc. No curse language, but depending on your child and how likely they are to repeat things, those are some things to keep in mind. And there's also a reference to mom's former boyfriend. So those are some slightly mature themes that might be in there, but remember that most animated films are geared at the whole family, which means that while they may be aesthetically designed and the main message may be designed for kids, there's often things in those movies that are for adults. Sarcasm, kind of private jokes, things that kids would not necessarily pick up on right away, or at all. So keep in mind that sometimes you are going to have these smacks of mature themes in even an animated film. And yes, Inside Out is animated, because they are trying to appeal to the entire family audience, which is not a bad thing. So the main key messages here, there are wellness messages in these movies, especially in Inside Out. I mean, Inside Out is a fantastic look at the core 5 emotions that we tend to operate with, at least until puberty, which, is basically happiness, anger, disgust, sadness, and the 5th one is not coming to me right now, so just give me a hot minute. Joy. Joy is the main one that's focused on in this particular movie. So the key messages to take away are happiness is not just about joy. Other emotions play a role in true happiness. Even sadness plays a role. And there's a huge emphasis on that. And what I liken it to is we can't experience real joy if we don't experience the opposite, right? Or the absence of it. So to me, that's huge. We can't identify happiness without the absence or opposite of it. It's okay to have other emotions. We as parents tend to teach our kids and even tell ourselves that other emotions require repression, that the only one we should show is happiness or joy, and that all those other all those other emotions are bad and we need to repress them, when that's not necessarily the case. And when we send these messages to our children, either by telling them that or by modeling that in ourselves, you know, those messages become our kids' inner voices. So I don't want to say too much about the movie, because if you haven't seen it, if you have seen it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen it, I don't want to be a spoiler. But it is super cute. My take on this is that the movie is phenomenal. Counselors and parents are using these characters to help children explain emotions, which is fantastic, because now the movie has become a tool for talking about feelings, which is really important. And this is a great way to use a fun family movie to facilitate deeper conversation. Yes, there are some more adult directed jokes in the movie. But if you realize that your 6+ child probably isn't going to pick up on those, and if they do, then it's probably because they're 14 or 15, then you can just embrace the movie as a whole family event. And even if you're not young, if you're just young at heart, this is still a great movie to watch. Nobody's going to judge you for watching an animated film without a child with you. I have a friend who used to insist that she couldn't watch an animated film in theater without taking a child with her, or people would look at her weird. And I totally don't agree with that. I think that if you are young at heart, you watch whatever you want, whether it's in the theater or at home streaming. But Inside Out can be found on some streaming channels. And it's just fantastic. Like I said, a great way to introduce kids to ways to talk about their emotions. And definitely worth the watch. It's one of my #1 favorites. And I can't believe it took me 10 years. Basically, this movie's 10 years old. I was shocked when I saw when it was released, because I really thought it had only been a couple years ago. This movie's 10 years old. It's fantastic. If you haven't seen it, it is totally worth the watch. Now, my second pick is Inside Out 2, for obvious reasons. Had to watch the second one because the first one was so stinking cute. And yes, by the way, at the end of the first one, I cried a little. There were tears. So for Inside Out 2, again, the rating is PG. Common Sense Media again says ages 6+, but gives this one 4 out of 5 stars instead of 5 out of 5 stars. There are some components that include scary/mature themes. And again, we just talked about this with Inside Out 1, which is that animated films, originally animation was created for adults, as entertainment for adults. If you go back and look at Looney Tunes and things like that, you know, Tom and Jerry, that will kind of cement that point of view for you. But the animations were so appealing to children that they started branching off into creating more cartoon animated movies for children. So again, Common Sense Media gives this an ages 6+ rating and gives it 4 out of 5 stars. There are some mature themes. For example, in Inside Out 2, the emotion of anxiety is introduced, and anxiety drinks a lot of energy drinks and kind of hammers them down. That's kind of an adult theme. There's some scary themes, like a deep, dark vault that contains a secret of Riley's, the main character. And again, more mature themes. Mom remembers Mom's emotions are at the console, and they remember an ex-boyfriend of Mom's. But there continue to be some fantastic messages, while there's some great humorous tidbits and even some fantastic messages for the adults. So the key messages here, and if I didn't explain an Inside Out, a lot of this takes place around the console that is basically the control center for the main character, Riley. And these emotions each get different shots at control of this console. Well, at the end of Inside Out 1, there's a button that says puberty, and somebody asks what that is because it never does anything. It doesn't do anything. So that's kind of a window into the future. Inside Out 2 kind of begins with this puberty button all of a sudden going off and like a siren and making all kinds of noise and flashing, waking everybody up in the middle of the night. And so ensues a whole new story that introduces 5 new emotions to Riley's picture. So again, some scary themes. Now we're getting into puberty. So even though this says for 6+, keep in mind that there are going to be some themes you may not be prepared to explain to a 6-year-old. 6-year-old may not pick up on them. But as you're starting to get into the older children, 9, 10, this may be a catalyst for some questions that you need to be prepared to answer if you're going to watch this. Or you save this, even though Common Sense Media says 6+, again, PG, parental guidance, you are the best rating system. Determine whether or not you feel like your child is prepared to look at this topic. Maybe preview the movie for yourself. Trust me, nobody's going to judge you. It's super cute. And there's a lot of messages there that adults can walk away with too. And then decide if it's something you feel like you want your child to watch. So the key messages here is that puberty brings a whole new slew of emotions to the picture, to the original 5, or to the console. And the focus of this movie is is anxiety at the center of creating a ton of self-doubt. Now that's something every teenager is dealing with. That's something a lot of adults are dealing with. I personally really resonated with this movie. And I resonated with the way they portrayed anxiety because, just because of anxiety's personality. So the new emotions are, I lost my notes. The new emotions are anxiety, envy, nostalgia, and something called ennui. That's how it's pronounced. It's spelled ENNUI. And that is the teenager boredom/apathy, which is a super cute character, and doesn't get a lot of attention. It's kind of just ancillary until towards the end. So what happens is when the puberty button goes off and these new emotions enter, then it kind of destabilizes everything. Obviously, just like it destabilizes a teenager. And there's a lot of amplification of emotion. And if you know what if you haven't experienced that yet, I'm so sorry. But here's a warning. So what happens is the old emotions are destabilized because as the puberty starts to happen before the new characters are introduced, anger, sadness, and disgust will push a tiny little button very lightly. And it's like they beat on that thing, and the emotional response, good morning, Miss Kayla, the emotional response on Riley's part is explosive. So again, another metaphor for what puberty looks like. And just another fantastic movie. This one might even be a little bit more adult targeted than Inside Out 1. But the point is, and again, the key takeaways are all of these emotions are essential. They are essential. And even when they're not comfortable, they are essential. And they all have healthy and unhealthy forms. Anxiety has a very unhealthy form in this movie. But then it also has a moment where it's a little healthier. Just like in the first Inside Out, joy was sometimes a little on the unhealthy level, where it was more like, no, all other emotions don't matter. We got to be happy all the time. When we know that's not true, right? We know that it's not possible for us to be happy all the time and to feel joy all the time. And the only way that we could truly even come close to that is if we experience these other emotions. Well, in this second Inside Out, anxiety is the main focus of this movie. And as someone who has been living with anxiety my entire life, I just really appreciated the humor-laced reality that was placed into this character, for lack of a better way to put it. So all these emotions are essential, and that is the key message. After spending so many years telling ourselves and our children that we have to repress certain sides of us, this movie basically asserts that, or these movies basically assert that, no, all of these emotions are essential. We have to learn how to balance them and handle them. So even when they're not comfortable. Um, you know, and like anxiety, the healthy form and the unhealthy form. I'm sorry to hear that. Was it because you didn't like the movie, Kayla, or because it maybe hit home a little bit too much? I would be curious to know. So the biggest thing here is like talking about anxiety having a healthy and unhealthy form. An example is my own anxiety. The healthy form was where I could harness my anxiety to be very particular about my schedule and everything related to school when I was studying for my bachelor's, and even now studying for my master's. And my anxiety helps me to perform. However, there were other situations like with my social anxiety where my anxiety was out of control. It was in unhealthy form and it was impeding in my function. So that's just a quick example. All right. So again, my takeaway, this is a great way to explain emotions, and there are no bad emotions. Yes, Kayla. And I felt that too. Like I said, this particular movie, animated or not, there's a strong message there for adults as much as there is for kids. Thank you for sharing. So again, this message in my take might be more for adults than for kids, and emphasizes the importance. I'm on the wrong movie. Sorry. Great way to explain hard emotions, and that there are no bad emotions, just like Inside Out 1. And it addresses, also the movie also addresses, without any spoilers, it addresses how our core beliefs can move from good to shame if they're not challenged when they kind of start to go south. So great movie to watch. Again, even if you're not sure about watching it with your kids, watch it for yourself. I know you'll get something out of it. And then you can make that decision because you are still the best rating system. All right, number 3 movie, and I'm going to try to speed up because I'm already running a little long. The number 3 movie of my choice, and we actually watched this last year. It's called If. This was released in 2024. Again, the primary rating system is PG. Common Sense Media again gives it ages 6+, 4 out of 5 stars. With some mild scary scenes that would only distress very young or sensitive kids, and some very mild language like but, good God, what the heck, like WTH, and one damn. So keep in mind Ryan Reynolds is the main character in this movie. And he is fabulous. I find him to be fabulous in almost any type of role, but that means there's going to be some adult sarcasm. And it also means, that there may be some language. And you're also dealing with a mix of adults and kids. I don't honestly remember any terrible language in there, but it's been a little bit since we watched this. So the premise of If is that If stands for Imaginary Friends, IF, and explores what happens to them as we grow older and grow out of them. And in this situation, they are depicted as being in a retirement home. But it basically explores, it's a fantasy about loss and the power of imagination. There's tons of positivity, and exploration into why it's okay to remember things and even act childlike at times, even as an adult, and suggests that we all have a purpose, and that fulfilling that purpose brings joy no matter how old we are, which I just love that message. And that no matter how old we are, we also need someone in our corner. So again, if you haven't seen the movie, I don't want to spoil it, so I'm going to be careful. Another core message here is that you're not alone. And in some ways, this could touch on a personal belief system if you nudge it into talking about relatives who have passed, acting as guardian angels or acting as imaginary friends. So as a parent, it kind of depends on where you take the conversation, which of course is contingent on what the child asks, if the child asks questions. But again, some great messages and humor for the adults that is subtle and that the kids might not pick up on right away. Great twist at the ending. Just a fabulous movie. Not animated, it's live action. And again, it has an all-star cast. Ryan Reynolds is in it, and I think Dave Carell does a voice, so it's an all-star voice cast. Because a lot of these are the imaginary friends. But super cute, totally unique story to anything else I've seen out of Hollywood in a while. And again, some great messages for the parents and the kids. All right, this fourth one that I'm going to highlight, and Sorry if I'm running a little bit long. This fourth one I'm going to highlight may not be for you. It depends on your belief system. I am a woman of faith. I believe in God. This was a movie I sat and watched with my grandson on a week that my granddaughter wasn't with us. I had mom's permission because this isn't always a topic that she touches on a regular basis. She supports it, but doesn't necessarily touch on it herself. So I checked with mom. And even in the process, even though I didn't watch the movie before I watched it with him, but I did find myself in a couple of sections thinking, this is going to lead to some questions, and I maybe should have watched this first so I could be prepared for that. So it is rated PG. It is an animated film. Obviously, it is a story about Jesus. Common Sense Media gives it an age 8+, and gives it 4 out of 5 stars. I'm telling you, proceed with caution, because if you are not a person that believes in God or believes in the story of Jesus, this is obviously not going to be a movie you want to watch with your children or grandchildren. If you are the type of person that doesn't believe that yourself, but doesn't want to impede in your child or grandchild's beliefs, then maybe, but you still need to be prepared to answer some questions. There are some potentially scary scenes. Obviously, it's the story of Jesus. There are some things that they don't go into grave detail about, but there are some things that can seem kind of scary. And obviously, there's absolutely no language here. Absolutely no questionable language in this movie. The key points are, as you would expect, hope, redemption, love, and compassion, faith, family relationships, forgiveness, and unity. So some great messages, but again, it depends on your beliefs. So if this is not part of your belief system, then this may not be a movie you want to watch with your children or grandchildren. If it is part of your belief system, it may be worth watching it yourself first. The whole point of this is like a it's like a storybook feel. It's a digestible storybook depiction of Jesus' story. So it's kind of an introduction for teaching the child more. But it has enough that you can, as an adult, you can understand it. There might be a couple of adult jokes there, but not like you would think, like more reference parents and how we handle kids sometimes. The key point of this book, it was inspired by a book by Charles Dickens. So that's where there seems to be some confusion with this particular story. The story was inspired by Charles Dickens. It was not written by Charles Dickens. There was actually a story called The Life of Our Lord that Charles Dickens wrote that he intended for his children. And this movie is based on that book, inspired by that book. And in the beginning, it depicts Charles Dickens, shortly after, I think, A Christmas Carol was released, narrating the story of Jesus to his son. So super cute. But again, my caution is if your belief system isn't the same as mine, and you don't believe in the story of Jesus, this might be a skip for you. But if that does fit into your belief system, this is a really digestible way to introduce this information to your children or grandchildren. But again, even now, as much as, my grandson asked 1 or 2 questions, kind of fielded the questions, I do kind of wish I would have watched this one before I watched it with him. Even despite the fact that I had mom's permission, sent mom the trailer, we talked about it, had him watch the trailer, we talked about it. But this particular one, I probably wish I had watched first, before. All right, so I'm going to start wrapping up, but real quick, if these 4 aren't for you, if you've already seen them, whatever the case may be, here's some other recent personal faves and throwbacks that I just want to touch on. The Emperor's New Groove. Make sure you have a child or a grandchild that can handle sarcasm, not run rampant with it. But The Emperor's New Groove is full of just delight for kids and parents alike. The humor is subtle, but David Spade is David Spade. He plays the part of the Emperor, and he has a zinging wit and sarcasm that is just unsurpassed, in my opinion. And kids that tend to repeat things or be like little minor birds, they're going to repeat some of that sarcasm, so be prepared. But The Emperor's New Groove is fabulous. It is hilarious. It has an all-star cast, and a fantastic message about selfishness versus compassion, and about humility, and a subtle underlying message about being careful about not getting stuck in a groove. And I think that's really super important. So another great one. Oh, also Common Sense Media gives Emperor's New Groove age 6+ and 4 out of 5 stars. Snow Dogs is another one. I watched this with my grandkids last summer. And it is recommended for 8+. My grandson was maybe just about to turn 7 at the time. 3 out of 5 stars. Watch that your kids don't try to bite ears. My grandson actually, after watching Snow Dogs, if you haven't seen it, it's a Disney movie. It's live action, totally worth the watch. You can probably get it on Disney Plus, rent it on stream it from Netflix if it's there, or from Hulu or Fandango at home or whatever. But Snow Dogs is super cute. It is live action. It stars Cuba Gooding Jr. And my grandson actually went home, and when one of the dogs was acting up, informed his mother that somebody needed to bite the dog's ear. And that came, and my daughter was like, what in the world? And that came directly from the movie we had watched that week. So keep that in mind, but it is a super great movie, and it has fantastic messages about joy, resilience, bonding, and embracing adventure. Also a little bit touch on non-traditional families, which is pretty cool too. All right, another one, my personal fave. This is a throwback for me. The Best Christmas Pageant Ever was released last year. Yes, it's a Christmas movie. Yes, it's about the story of Jesus. It's recommended for ages 8+, 4 out of 5 stars. It is live action. It is faith-based. I was the leading character in this play when I was in school, so I had a personal attachment and was super excited when I saw that they were coming out with a new live action version. They had done other cheesier, lower budget versions in the past. The movie was fantastic. Bring the tissues. The kids that are featured in this movie, the leading characters, are rough around the edges. They have a rough childhood. They have a lot of adverse childhood experiences. So there's going to be some language associated with that. And that's part of the story, but keep that in mind. So again, if faith-based things are not for you, you might want to skip this one. But if they are, if you've not seen this movie, it's worth the watch. Again, may want to watch it for yourself if you're not familiar with the story. In my case, I was incredibly familiar with the story because, again, I played the lead character in a school play. So I was super excited, and I did not review it before watching it with my grandson. But super cute, definitely worth the watch. And one more, this one's for teens and adults. This one's iffy. If you are not a person of faith, you could probably watch this one and just kind of temper that out. It is really a great story. And of course, it depends on what your belief system is. This is, again, a faith-based movie. It's produced by Angel Studios, which is a newer media studio that's doing a lot of faith-based productions right now. Hoovie is more for teens and adults, maybe not for younger kids. We just watched it. Eric and I just watched it recently. It's recommended for ages 9+ by Common Sense Media. Gets 3 out of 5 stars. Stars Patrick Warburton, who is also the voice of Kronk in The Emperor's New Groove. I think Patrick Warburton is fantastic. And also very funny. But in this movie, it's a little bit different character. Hoovie is about a young man who develops a brain tumor. High school boy, and the ensuing things that happen surrounding this brain tumor. It is a story of resilience. It is a story of faith and strength of family. And it is definitely, if it's not too far outside of your belief system, it's definitely worth the watch. Again, bring the tissues. So those are my recent personal faves and throwbacks. So here's what I want you to remember. I'm going to wrap this up now. Most kids' movies will have adult themes and humor because that's what draws the whole family. So you just kind of have to temper what you think is something that your child may or may not pick up on. But remember, these are targeted at whole families, so that's why they're designed that way. It's always good to limit screen time. We're huge fans of limiting screen time. And that's for adults too. But a movie is a great way to escape the heat. We haven't even begun to see the heat here in Citrus County, where I live. Yesterday, it was raining most of the day. We still only did that short amount of screen time while we watched a movie. So there is a way to do the screen time in a way that's educational and not overdone for the kids and for the adults. And then just remember that ultimately there's no shortage of good family films. There are still some good, clean, wholesome family shows, family films out there. Some are old, some are new, but the right movie can not only spark laughter, but it can also spark deeper conversations and healing. As always, it's best to use your judgment. Check out the reviews, check out other people's opinions, but in the end, your judgment is what's going to matter. So, if you found this helpful, and I hope you did, please share. And definitely, if you have a family favorite, drop it in the comments so that maybe if some of these that I mentioned aren't on the list for some parents, maybe we can pick up some other ones along the way. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you enjoyed kind of visiting the lighter side of wellness today. I'm not sure yet what I'm talking about, tossing around some different ideas. Shoot me a message if you have some ideas. And in the meantime, between now and next Wednesday, thank you so much for being here. Share if you found this helpful. And most importantly, be well. Bye.